Love Sense, the revolutionary new science of romantic relationships. Written by Dr. Sue Johnson, summarized by detailed book summaries. Don't forget to subscribe. Chapter 1. Love Sense by Dr. Sue Johnson. Rewritten in a smooth, immersive passage format. Just like a personal audio-style conversation, with no section breaks. Have you ever fallen in love and thought, what is happening to me? Your heart races. You can't stop thinking about them. You feel high one moment and terrified the next. It's as if some powerful force has taken over your mind and body. In Love Sense, Dr. Sue Johnson opens with the bold claim that this feeling, this dizzying, all-consuming state of being, isn't just emotional chaos. It's what she calls a brilliant madness. And more importantly, it's a signal that love isn't just an emotion. It's a survival mechanism, hardwired into our biology. From the very first chapter, she shifts the way we think about romantic love, stripping away the myths and giving us a clear, science-backed lens. Love is an ancient, deeply embedded need, just like hunger or thirst. And when we understand that, we begin to see our relationships and ourselves differently. Dr. Johnson draws us in with a simple truth. We are wired to bond. We come into the world seeking connection, and that need never goes away. The same emotional system that ties a baby to its mother is the system that draws two lovers into each other's arms. It's all part of the attachment system, an evolutionary gift that helps us survive by keeping us close to others. As she explains, our brains are designed to monitor how safe and connected we feel to those we depend on. So when we feel loved and emotionally secure, our brains relax. We feel calm, confident. But when the emotional bond feels shaky or threatened, even by something as small as a cold tone or a distracted glance, our brains perceive danger. Our hearts race, our minds spiral, and we may act in ways that seem irrational. But they're not irrational. They're instinctive. This is love as biology, not poetry. And it makes perfect sense. She weaves in powerful research from neuroscience to show how deep this wiring runs. Holding hands with a trusted partner has been shown to reduce pain in brain scans. Just knowing someone is emotionally there for you can lower stress hormones and soothe your nervous system. And on the flip side, the absence of that connection can trigger intense distress, activating the same brain centers as physical pain. That's why losing love, or even fearing that we might lose it, can feel like dying. It's not weakness. It's survival. Love isn't about dependency in the childish sense. It's about having someone who will be there for you when life gets hard. Someone who has your back. Someone who feels like home. This chapter also pushes back against one of our most harmful cultural narratives, that romantic love is about independence and self-sufficiency. That needing your partner too much is unhealthy. That grown-ups should be able to take care of themselves emotionally. But what if that's all wrong? What if needing someone isn't a flaw? It's the whole point. Johnson says, yes, autonomy matters, but we are not wired to go it alone. We're wired to reach for others when we're scared, lonely, overwhelmed, or hurting. That's not neediness. That's what it means to be human. Think of it this way. You can be strong and still want someone to hold your hand when you're in pain. In fact, knowing you have someone to turn to is what gives you the courage to face life's hardest moments. So why do relationships go wrong? Why do couples who once adored each other end up feeling like strangers, or even enemies? Dr. Johnson answers this with piercing clarity. The problem isn't usually incompatibility or poor communication. It's emotional disconnection. When we no longer feel safe with our partner, when we doubt that they are there for us emotionally, we panic. And that panic takes many forms. Some people cling. Some lash out. Some shut down. But underneath those behaviors is the same fear. Do I still matter to you? Are you still my person? She tells the story of a couple who had been married for decades, but came into therapy feeling distant, cold, and resentful. It wasn't that they didn't love each other. It was that their emotional connection had eroded slowly, subtly over time. The daily stress, the unspoken hurts, the missed opportunities for reassurance, they had all piled up. And now, even though they were physically together, they felt emotionally alone. This story is painfully common. Most couples don't fall apart because of big betrayals. They fall apart because they stop feeling seen. And when we don't feel seen, we protect ourselves in the only ways we know how. We push, we pull, we go quiet. But what we're really doing is crying out for connection. And this, Johnson explains, is the core insight of the book. Almost all the conflict in love comes back to one thing: how safe we feel in the bond. When we feel secure, we're generous. We laugh more. We solve problems better. But when we feel insecure, we become reactive. We spiral into what she calls the demon dialogues, destructive patterns of blame, withdrawal, and defensiveness. We start to protect ourselves from the person we most want to connect with. And the harder we try, the further away they seem. It's heartbreaking, but it's also reversible. By the end of the chapter, Johnson offers something rare: hope. Once we understand that love is about emotional safety, not grand romantic gestures or perfect communication, we can begin to rebuild it. We can learn to tune into our needs and our partner's needs. We can learn to reach, to respond, to hold each other through the storms. Love doesn't have to be a mystery. It can be a science and a practice. When you know how the system works, you don't have to fear the madness. You can embrace it. You can make it brilliant. So let's walk away from chapter 1 with this truth planted firmly in our hearts. Love is not about finding someone who never lets you down. It's about building a bond that feels safe enough to handle the moments when you do. You're not too needy. You're not too sensitive. You're just wired for connection. And when that connection is strong, love doesn't make you crazy, it makes you whole. Chapter 2. Love Sense by Dr. Sue Johnson. Written in a seamless, immersive passage format, like a heartfelt one-on-one conversation. No headers. No interruptions. Just a continuous flow. Have you ever felt like your whole body tenses up when your partner seems distant, even for just a moment? Or that unbearable anxiety that creeps in when a simple goodnight text never comes? You might tell yourself you're overreacting, but deep down the fear feels real. Because it is real. In this chapter, Dr. Sue Johnson pulls back the curtain on one of the most powerful forces driving how we love, and why we sometimes hurt so much in relationships: our attachment system. It's the invisible emotional infrastructure that shapes our every romantic impulse, need, and reaction. And it's been there since the beginning of our lives. Long before we ever fell in love, we learned about love through the first hands that held us, the first eyes that met ours, and the first voices that soothed our cries. Dr. Johnson introduces us to the groundbreaking work of John Bowlby, the British psychologist who revolutionized our understanding of emotional bonds. He dared to say what many at the time dismissed: that a child's need for emotional closeness isn't a sign of weakness or spoiling, it's biological. It's essential. Just as we need food and water, we need closeness. Bowlby saw that when children feel securely attached to a caregiver, they're not more dependent, they're braver. They explore. They thrive. That's because safety is the springboard for growth. And here's where the truth strikes a deep, resonant chord. Those same needs never go away. They just change shape. Instead of crying for a mother, we ache for a partner. We don't grow out of our attachment system, we grow into it. So when you feel abandoned or desperate for reassurance, or even hesitant to let someone get too close, you're not irrational. You're playing out patterns deeply imprinted on your emotional blueprint. And while they may have formed in childhood, they echo throughout every adult relationship we form. Dr. Johnson guides us through the different attachment styles we carry. If you grew up knowing that someone would come when you cried, you likely developed a secure attachment. You trust easily, love openly, and don't fear closeness. If your early emotional needs were met inconsistently, if love felt unpredictable, you might carry an anxious style into adulthood. You crave closeness but often feel on edge, waiting for the other shoe to drop. If your caregiver seemed distant or discouraged emotional expression, you may have developed an avoidant style, convincing yourself you don't need anyone at all, even when the loneliness creeps in at night. Now, this isn't about blame. It's about understanding. It's about seeing that your emotional patterns have a history, and that history matters. But Dr. Johnson offers a gentle, powerful truth. These styles are not cages. They are habits. And habits can change. Imagine you and your partner are on either end of an invisible rope. When the rope is slack, when you feel disconnected, you start tugging. Maybe you pull with anxious energy, desperately trying to feel close. Maybe you drop the rope, withdrawing to avoid the pain of rejection. Either way, you're reacting to the same fear, the fear that you're alone. And that fear is hardwired. It's not weakness. It's your brain doing exactly what it was built to do: seek safety and connection. Dr. Johnson illustrates this with real stories from couples she's worked with. One man, cold and distant on the surface, would shut down during arguments. His wife saw him as emotionally unavailable. But underneath he was terrified, afraid that if he opened up, he would be rejected or dismissed. Another woman, labeled as too needy, would spiral into panic when her partner didn't respond quickly to a message. But she wasn't needy. She was scared of being invisible. Once these couples understood that their behaviors weren't the problem, the fear behind them was, they could finally stop fighting each other and start fighting for the bond. That shift is profound, because now we're not labeling each other as difficult or broken. We're recognizing our emotional survival strategies. And when we do that, we create space for empathy, for softness, for change. What's most beautiful about this chapter is that it offers more than just insight. It offers permission. Permission to feel what you feel. Permission to want what you want. To long for reassurance, closeness, presence. We live in a culture that glorifies independence, that tells us love should be effortless, that needing someone too much means something's wrong. But Dr. Johnson turns that narrative on its head. Needing connection doesn't make you weak. It makes you real. Interdependence isn't failure. It's fulfillment. We're strongest when we're not alone. And yet, there's also space for hope. Because just as your early relationship shaped your attachment style, your current relationship has the power to reshape it. A partner who consistently shows up, who reaches back when you reach out, can begin to rewire those old scripts. A secure bond can take root even after years of insecurity. You can heal. You can love in new ways. It's not too late. So, if you find yourself clinging too tightly, or shutting down too quickly, or feeling like your emotional needs are too much, pause. Listen to what your body and your heart are telling you. Beneath the noise, there's a simple, honest question. Are you there for me? That's what we're really asking in every conflict, every silence, every tear. And when the answer is yes, when we know that someone will turn toward us instead of away, we feel safe. We feel seen. We feel loved. This is the key to love. Not grand gestures, not perfection, but emotional responsiveness. And now that we understand how attachment works, we're ready to explore the next piece of the puzzle. The science of love itself. How it moves through the brain, how it shapes the body, and how it can heal or hurt us more deeply than almost anything else in life. Chapter 3. Love Sense by Dr. Sue Johnson. Presented in a smooth, uninterrupted passage, like a deep late-night conversation that flows straight from heart to heart, without any breaks or headings. Have you ever noticed how your body reacts to love? The fluttering in your chest when you see someone you care about, or that hollow ache when you feel ignored, left out, or dismissed. We talk about heartbreak as if it's poetic, but what if it's also scientific, literal? What if love isn't just an emotional experience, but a biological event, one that runs through your nerves, your hormones, your heartbeat? That's the invitation Dr. Sue Johnson offers in this chapter, to see love not as something vague or mysterious, but as something tangible, measurable, even. Love, she tells us, is wired into the very circuitry of our brains. It's not just a luxury or a bonus. It's a survival tool. From the first moments of life, we are shaped by our connections. When someone holds us close, our little hearts calm. Our breathing steadies. Our stress hormones drop. This pattern is ancient and universal. And what's wild is that it doesn't stop when we grow up. We don't outgrow the need for emotional connection, we grow deeper into it. And what's even more profound is that love literally changes our physiology. It's not just something we feel. It's something that reshapes how our body works. Dr. Johnson dives into some of the most compelling research in neuroscience to explain just how deeply romantic love affects us. In one landmark study, people were shown pictures of their romantic partners while lying in an fMRI scanner. The results were clear. Looking at someone you're deeply attached to activates the brain's reward and safety systems. You feel calmer, more grounded, more stable. But when you're made to recall a moment of rejection or conflict, the very same parts of your brain that process physical pain light up like alarm bells. That's right, your brain doesn't make a sharp distinction between emotional hurt and physical injury. That dull ache in your chest after an argument isn't imagined. Your body is grieving something real. And it works both ways. Johnson shares a moving study from her own research in which women were placed in a scanner and subjected to a mild electric shock. When they were alone, their brains responded with stress and fear. But when they held their partner's hand, especially if that relationship was secure and loving. Their bodies calmed dramatically. The women reported feeling less pain, and their brains showed less alarm. Just holding someone's hand, someone who matters, someone who feels safe, transformed the experience of pain. This isn't just romantic. It's biological. Love is a painkiller. Love is a tranquilizer. Love changes the way your body registers the world. We're not just designed to want connection, we need it to feel well, to function, to thrive. And when we lose it, or even just sense that we might lose it, our entire system goes into distress. Think about how your heart races after a fight, or how you can't sleep when you're not sure where you stand with someone. That's not weakness. That's your attachment system sounding the alarm. It's trying to protect you. Because in evolutionary terms, being connected to others was safety. Being alone was danger. Our ancestors didn't survive by going it alone. They survived by bonding. The science tells us that love affects nearly every part of our health. Secure, loving relationships lower our blood pressure. They strengthen our immune system. They reduce anxiety and depression. They help us sleep better, recover faster from illness, and even live longer. The reverse is also true. Chronic loneliness and emotional disconnection take a toll on our bodies. They erode our sense of well-being and leave us more vulnerable to stress and disease. Love, it turns out, isn't just a feeling we crave. It's a condition we function best within. And yet, for all this science, so many of us feel ashamed of how much we need love. We're told that being independent is the goal. That we should be strong enough to stand alone. That needing someone else, especially emotionally, is somehow weak. But Dr. Johnson dismantles that lie piece by piece. The truth is, the more securely connected we are, the more confident and independent we become. Because when we know someone's there for us, really there, not just physically but emotionally, we take more risks. We become more creative. We venture into the world with a sense of safety beneath our feet. It's like standing on the edge of a cliff with a harness. You'll lean farther, jump farther, try more, because you trust the rope will hold. That's what secure love does. It anchors us. It gives us a base camp so we can climb higher. But what happens when we don't feel that safety? When a partner turns away, or shuts down, or disappears into silence? Our nervous system takes over. We don't reason our way through it. We react. We protest. Or we numb. And often, those reactions create more distance, not less. Johnson describes how easy it is for couples to misread each other. One partner might shut down during an argument, not because they don't care, but because they're overwhelmed. They don't know how to respond without feeling like a failure. The other might ramp up, get louder, more intense, not because they're trying to control, but because they're desperate to be seen, to reconnect. But to the one shutting down, that intensity feels like attack. And to the one ramping up, the withdrawal feels like abandonment. And so the spiral continues, two nervous systems crying out for safety, but missing each other in the dark. This is the tragedy of so many relationships. Not the absence of love, but the absence of understanding. But Johnson is clear. This cycle can be broken. The first step is to recognize that the body is part of the conversation. That when your partner doesn't respond, and your chest tightens, and your voice shakes, it's not just in your head. Your body is speaking. Your attachment system is calling out. And if both partners can learn to listen to that call, to their own signals, and to each other's, they can change the dance entirely. What's so comforting, even empowering, about this chapter is that it replaces confusion with clarity. You're not too sensitive. You're not overreacting. You're responding exactly the way nature intended when connection feels threatened. And once you see that, you can stop blaming yourself. You can stop blaming each other. And you can start asking the right questions, not why are you like this? But what are you feeling? What are you afraid of? What do you need? At the end of the day, Johnson says, love isn't a grand performance. It's not perfect communication or constant agreement or sexual fireworks. It's a deep, biological rhythm. A way two people move together toward safety, toward comfort, toward each other. And when that rhythm is working, you feel it in your bones. You breathe easier. You laugh more. The world doesn't seem so frightening. Because someone has you. And you have them. So the next time your partner reaches for your hand, or looks at you with soft eyes after a hard day, or just sits beside you in the quiet, remember what that means. That's not just affection. That's regulation. That's healing. That's love doing what love was made to do. Chapter 4. Love Sense by Dr. Sue Johnson. Written as one continuous, fully immersive passage. No headers, no breaks. Just a natural, flowing narrative, as if you're listening to a soft, compelling voice late at night, helping you understand something about yourself you always felt but never quite had words for. Until now. What does it really mean to fall in love? Not just to be infatuated or physically attracted, but to form that deep, unmistakable sense that this person, this specific person, could become home. In this chapter, Dr. Sue Johnson takes us past the first spark and into the deeper layers of romantic bonding. Because despite all the poetry in pop songs, love, real love, is not magic. It's not even a mystery. It's a biological process, a structured dance, a way our brains and hearts move towards safety through connection. And once we understand that dance, we can learn to lead it with intention instead of getting pulled through it blindly. Falling in love, Johnson explains, is really the beginning of an emotional attachment. It starts with those heady feelings we associate with romance. Racing hearts, butterflies, the dopamine rush of newness and desire. But as the relationship deepens, something more profound begins to happen. We shift from simply wanting this person around to needing them in a much more elemental way. Not needy in the way we've been taught to fear, but in the same way that a child needs a parent or that a climber needs a rope. We begin to rely on them emotionally. We begin to wire them into our nervous system. Their presence calms us. Their distance alarms us. And whether we realize it or not, our brains start scanning for one essential signal. Are you there for me? It's such a simple question. And yet, so much of our emotional well-being hinges on the answer. When that answer is yes, we settle. When it's maybe, or I don't know, or not right now, we protest. We panic. We protect. That's the transition point in every relationship. The move from infatuation to vulnerability. And it's here, Johnson says, that we either build a bond that lasts or fall into the cycle of disconnection that so often pulls us apart. In those early, golden days of a relationship, we are naturally responsive. We listen closely. We reach out. We prioritize emotional engagement without even trying. That's why it feels so effortless. We're tuning into each other's emotional cues, constantly sending and receiving messages of, I'm here. I see you. I care. But inevitably, life interrupts. Stress creeps in. Conflicts arise. And suddenly, we start to miss each other's signals. A distracted answer feels like rejection. A long pause in conversation feels like distance. A forgotten text feels like betrayal. And we react. This is where the dance turns into a tug-of-war. One partner might raise their voice, press harder, demand a response. The other pulls away, becomes silent, defensive, or cold. And what looks like a power struggle is actually two scared people trying to protect their bond. One is fighting not to be abandoned. The other is hiding from shame or failure or helplessness. And the more they both react, the more the bond unravels. It happens quietly, gradually, but painfully. Dr. Johnson names this for what it is. Not conflict, but protest. A protest against disconnection. A protest against losing the one person you trust to be there for you when everything else in the world feels uncertain. And once you see that, the story of your relationship changes. You stop seeing your partner as the enemy, and you start seeing them as someone who's afraid, just like you. She introduces a deceptively simple framework, ARI, that captures the essence of secure love. Are you accessible to me? Responsive to me? Emotionally engaged with me? These are the pillars of a secure bond. When all three are in place, love feels safe. It deepens. It lasts. But when even one is missing, the ground begins to shift beneath us. We may not always be able to name what's wrong, but we feel it in our bodies. The tension, the anxiety, the doubt. And so we act, pushing, withdrawing, blaming, not because we want to fight, but because we want contact. Because we want to feel close again. Because something in us remembers what it's like to be safe in someone's arms, and we are reaching desperately to get back there. What's so beautiful and healing about Johnson's view is that she strips away the blame and replaces it with understanding. She shows us that the deepest wounds in love aren't caused by incompatibility or personality flaws. They're caused by moments of disconnection that were never understood or repaired. That is what hurts us. Not the fight, but the silence afterward. Not the anger, but the emotional absence behind it. She reminds us that love is a dance, not a battle, not a negotiation. It's a movement toward and away, a rhythm we fall into when we feel safe and seen. And the good news? Even if we lose the rhythm, we can find it again. That's the miracle of emotional bonding. It's not rigid. It's reparable. When we begin to understand the steps, to see the protests for what they are, to soften instead of strike, to reach instead of retreat, we can reestablish the bond. We can say, I was scared, instead of you never listen. We can say, I miss you, instead of you always walk away. And in those moments, love becomes visible again. Touchable. Real. So what makes love last? It's not perfect communication or constant agreement. It's not being low maintenance or not too emotional. It's responsiveness. It's knowing that when you call out, someone will turn toward you. That's what attachment is. That's what love is. And it's what we all want, even if we're afraid to ask for it. The truth is, most of us are just looking for one thing: to matter. To someone. To be the reason they come home. The voice they want to hear. The person they turn to when the world gets hard. And we don't want it once. We want it again and again. We want it every day in 1,000 tiny ways that say, I see you. I'm with you. You are not alone. That's the heart of chapter 4. Not that love is easy, but that love makes us stronger when it's secure. That the journey from first spark to lasting bond isn't an accident, but a dance that can be learned, practiced, and trusted. That when we know the steps, we don't have to live in fear of losing love. We can build it. We can rebuild it. And we can rest in it. Chapter 5. Love Sense by Dr. Sue Johnson. Written as one seamless, uninterrupted narrative. Like a quiet, late evening reflection that pours directly into your heart, fluid and whole. We don't fall out of love in one grand, dramatic moment. More often, it slips away in fragments. Quiet moments when we feel alone beside someone we used to feel joined to. A gesture overlooked. A silence that stretches too long. A conflict left unresolved. Dr. Sue Johnson, in Chapter 5 of Love Sense, invites us into the vulnerable and often hidden world of love lost in disconnection. The slow erosion of a bond we thought was safe, and what it takes to come back from the edge. Love, as she reminds us again, is a bond, not a bargain. It's not about keeping score or perfect communication. It's about emotional responsiveness. The turning point in any relationship is not whether we argue, but whether we stay emotionally engaged when we do. Love begins to break not when the shouting starts, but when our attempts to reconnect go unanswered. The hurt begins when our vulnerability meets a closed door. Imagine you're hurting and you reach out, not with clarity or grace, but with whatever courage you can summon in the moment. Maybe it comes out sharp or sarcastic, or you simply go quiet, waiting for your partner to notice. But instead of turning toward you, they stay distant. Maybe they're confused, tired, afraid themselves. Maybe they don't know what to say, but still they don't come closer. And so the cycle begins, not one of disinterest but of missed connections. One partner pushes or protests, the other shuts down or disappears. The harder one tries to be seen, the more the other vanishes. Each movement feeds the other, creating a loop that feels suffocating on one side and overwhelming on the other. We don't know how we got here. We just know it hurts. Dr. Johnson calls this the negative cycle, and she is clear. This cycle is the enemy, not you, not your partner. The pattern is what traps you both. It grows in the space between your longing and their silence, your fear and their defense. The deeper the disconnection, the more extreme the reactions become. And in that emotional whirlwind, it's easy to forget that what we really want is not control or escape or even calm. What we really want is to matter. To know that when we reach out, someone will reach back. She explains that when connection is threatened, our nervous systems react as if we are in danger because biologically we are. The same attachment system that was formed in infancy stays active throughout life. When we feel emotionally abandoned, our bodies register that as a survival threat. We either protest, pushing, pleading, escalating, or we shut down, retreating into numbness. Both are attempts to cope with a sense of relational danger. Both are cries for closeness disguised as self-protection. In the middle of this spiral, the meaning of our partner's behavior becomes distorted. We stop seeing them as scared or lost and start seeing them as selfish, uncaring, or cold. The withdrawer thinks, no matter what I do, I can't please them. I'm failing. The pursuer thinks, they don't care. I'm all alone here. Neither view is fully true, but both feel real. And the pain of that loneliness, the ache of disconnection, is what threatens the foundation of love. But there is a way out. Johnson teaches us that to repair a bond, we don't need perfect words. We need emotional honesty. The kind that strips away performance and speaks from the raw center of longing. We learn to say, I miss you. Feel shut out. I'm scared I don't matter to you anymore. And we listen for what lies beneath our partner's silence. I don't know how to get it right. I'm afraid you're better off without me. This isn't easy. It asks us to lower our armor, to feel what we've worked hard to suppress. But this is the only path back to connection. Vulnerability. Because love is not about strength, it's about closeness. The kind of closeness where it's safe to be fragile, where the answer to pain is not defense, but comfort, and where two people can say, I hurt you. I didn't mean to. I want to make it right. Dr. Johnson also helps us see that many couples mistake their distress for incompatibility. But in most cases, it's not that they love the wrong person. It's that they've been caught in a pattern of emotional misfiring. The pain therein is a sign that the bond matters. That's why it hurts. And once we stop attacking each other and start attacking the cycle, we begin to find each other again. She walks us through stories of couples who seemed irreparably lost. People who hadn't touched in months, who lived in the same house but felt worlds apart. And yet, with guidance, with presence, with softness, they began to share their hurt differently. They didn't blame. They named. They said, I felt so alone when you turned away. And the partner who had seemed distant could finally say, I thought I was protecting us by staying quiet. I didn't know how much it was costing you. These are the moments that change everything. Not because they solve every problem, but because they restore emotional safety. When you know you can cry and not be left, speak and not be silenced, reach and not be rejected, that is when trust returns. That is when the bond begins to mend. The essence of this chapter is a profound yet simple truth. Love breaks when we feel alone in our fear. And it heals when someone chooses to stay. Not to fix us. Not to debate us. Just to be there. Fully. Softly. Present. We all get caught in the dance of disconnection. That doesn't mean the relationship is doomed. It means there's something to fight for. Something precious worth reclaiming. And the way we do that isn't through logic or technique. It's through turning back toward each other and saying, in whatever way we can, I want to be close to you again. I'm scared too. But I'm still here. That's how love survives. Not because it never breaks, but because it learns how to repair. Chapter 6. Love Sense by Dr. Sue Johnson. Fully rewritten into a single, continuous passage. Smooth, flowing, and emotionally immersive, with no interruptions or structural markers. This version reads like an intimate, late-night reflection. Gentle, tender, and honest. In every troubled relationship, behind every sharp word, every silent retreat, every tired argument played on loop, there's something softer hiding underneath. Something afraid, something tender, something that still longs to be loved. That's what Chapter 6 is all about. Beneath the fights in the distance, Dr. Sue Johnson shows us a very human truth. Our angry outbursts, our icy silences, our tendency to accuse, avoid, or shut down. These are all protective moves. We reach and react not because we've stopped caring, but because we care so much it hurts. When love feels threatened, we panic. And in that panic, we lash out or we pull away. We don't mean to sabotage love, but that's what fear does when it has nowhere to go. At the center of this chapter lies the concept of protest. When our emotional bond feels shaky, when we feel our partner slipping, when our need for connection goes unmet, we don't just calmly express what we need. We protest. Loudly, silently, clumsily. And our protests don't always look like desperation. Sometimes they look like blame. Sometimes they look like withdrawal. But beneath them is always the same longing. To know we matter, to know we're not alone. This is why Johnson urges us to stop seeing these reactions as irrational or dramatic, and instead see them as signals. Important emotional alarms going off because the connection is in danger. She brings in the concept of attachment injuries. Those moments when someone we trust isn't there for us when we need them most. They might not seem like a big deal to an outsider. A cold response to vulnerability, a refusal to engage when we're in distress, a dismissal of something that felt sacred. But to the person who experiences them, these moments hit like emotional earthquakes. They rattle our sense of safety in the relationship, and when they go unacknowledged or unrepaired, they become emotional scar tissue. We carry them. We reference them in future fights. We begin to expect more pain, even when none is present. Because once the bond feels unsafe, even good moments feel uncertain. This is where the negative cycles take root, the repetitive patterns Johnson calls demon dialogues. And they don't always explode. Some smolder quietly for years. In one pattern, both partners accuse each other. In another, one protests while the other shuts down. In the most dangerous one, both partners retreat completely. It's not the content of the arguments that matters. It's the emotional choreography, the moves that repeat, the panic beneath the posture, the shared fear that maybe this connection we've built isn't as safe as it once felt. The beauty of Johnson's approach is that she reframes all of this. Every bit of conflict, protest, and emotional drama. Not as dysfunction, but as the very human response to needing someone deeply. These patterns don't mean your relationship is broken beyond repair. They mean it matters. They mean your emotional bond is trying to get your attention. And the first step to healing isn't solving the surface argument. It's slowing down and saying, what's really going on here? What am I afraid of? What is my partner afraid of? How are we both reaching for each other? Even if it doesn't look like it. What we often call communication problems, she says, are really attachment crises in disguise. We think we're fighting about chores or parenting or money, but we're actually fighting about something much deeper. Will you show up for me? Do I still matter to you? Are you still my person? These are not rational debates. They are emotional cries for safety and reassurance. And here, Johnson gives us one of the most important truths in the book. Love is not about avoiding conflict. It's about repairing disconnection. It's not about always saying the right thing. It's about making the other person feel that even in the mess, even in the hurt, they're not alone. That when the walls go up, someone will knock gently and say, I'm still here. I want to understand. I want to stay close. She backs this up with science, pointing to powerful research that shows how emotional presence literally changes how we experience stress. In one study, people who held their partner's hand during a stressful moment felt less pain, less fear, less threat. Not because of the words spoken, but because of the simple presence of someone who cares. That's what love does. It regulates us. It calms our nervous system. It tells our body, our mind, and our heart, you are not alone. So what heals a broken bond? Not clever arguments or rational explanations. What heals is emotional accessibility, responsiveness, engagement. It's being able to say, even shakily, I'm scared. I miss you. I need to know you're here. And it's being able to hear that from your partner, not as an accusation but as a bid for connection. When we begin to talk to each other from that place, the soft place beneath the fight, the cycle begins to change. Slows down. It opens up. And in that space, love begins to breathe again. This chapter isn't just about understanding conflict. It's about changing how we see our partner when things go wrong. Instead of the enemy, they become someone who's hurting. Instead of blaming ourselves for being too emotional or too needy, we begin to understand that needing someone emotionally is not a weakness. It's the most human thing about us. And when we stop apologizing for needing love, we start building relationships where that need can finally be met. So, the next time you find yourself caught in that familiar dance, the same argument, the same silence, the same ache, pause, take a breath, and ask yourself, what am I really trying to say? What am I afraid of? What is my partner trying to show me underneath their reaction? You might find that what seemed like disconnection is really just a cry for closeness. And the moment you answer that cry, not perfectly, not eloquently, just honestly, you begin to turn the dance around. You begin to come home. Chapter 7. Love Sense by Dr. Sue Johnson. Fully rewritten into a single, immersive, uninterrupted passage. Gentle, honest, and deeply human. Like a voice quietly guiding you through the core of emotional reconnection. There's a moment in every relationship, often subtle, sometimes dramatic, when we stop guarding and start reaching. A moment when we stop circling the same tired arguments, stop clinging to the surface, and finally dare to step down into what's real, what's raw. This is the heart of Chapter 7. What it means to truly reconnect. Not just to coexist or get along, but to emotionally engage again. To meet each other in the place underneath the pain. The place where fear and love live side by side. By now, Dr. Sue Johnson has walked us through the storms of romantic disconnection. The protests, the patterns, the loops that play out like a well-rehearsed but heartbreaking dance. She's shown us how those patterns aren't flaws in the people but symptoms of fear. But now, in this chapter, she brings us to a gentler place, the turning point. The quiet space where the fighting slows, and something new can begin to take shape. Healing. Softness. The return of safety. She explains that healing doesn't begin with solutions. It begins with presence. The kind of presence where one partner says, maybe for the first time in years, "I miss you," and the other stays. Doesn't deflect. Doesn't defend. Just listens. Just breathes. Just stays. This act alone, this simple staying, is revolutionary in a relationship that's been hurt, worn down, or frozen. Because presence says, "I'm here. I care. You matter." Johnson calls this emotional engagement, and it's not something lofty or abstract. It's profoundly simple but not always easy. It means being reachable when your partner needs you. Not perfectly but openly. Not with all the right words but with your whole heart turned toward them. It means hearing not just the words they say, but the emotion beneath them. The fear of being too much. The ache of feeling not enough. The longing to know, "Are you still with me?" What's so moving about this chapter is how clearly Johnson shows that emotional engagement is not reserved for the rare few. It's not magic. It's not a mystery. It's a skill. A learnable, repeatable, deeply human skill. And when we practice it, when we learn to pause the defensive stories in our heads and instead turn to our partner with openness, we begin to rewire not only the relationship, but our own internal sense of worth and safety. One of the most transformative parts of emotional engagement is what Johnson calls the hold me tight conversation. A structured, guided way for couples to express their deeper feelings, to be seen without judgment, and to respond with compassion. It starts with naming the pattern. We get stuck in this place. Then it moves toward vulnerability. When that happens, I feel scared, I feel alone. I start to believe I don't matter to you. And then the most powerful step, the reach. I don't want to push you away. I want to feel close to you again. She illustrates this with stories. Real couples in therapy sessions, at the edge of despair, who finally risk saying the words they've been too hurt or too proud or too afraid to say. A wife says, "I yell because I'm scared, I've already lost you." A husband replies, "I go quiet because I think I can't fix it, and I don't know what else to do." For a moment, both put down their shields. And in that moment, everything changes. They see each other again. Not as enemies, not as problems to solve, but as scared people who want to feel close again. That's what emotional engagement does. Takes the blame out of the equation. It moves us from right versus wrong to safe versus unsafe. And in that space, love becomes possible again. Not as an ideal, but as a lived experience. Something fragile and real that can be nurtured and rebuilt. Johnson reminds us again and again. Love is not a contract. It's a bond. It doesn't grow stronger through negotiation. It grows stronger through responsiveness. Through being willing to say, "You matter to me even when it's hard. Even when I'm tired. Even when I don't know how to say it well." That's the true intimacy. Not never hurting each other, but always choosing to come back and reconnect. She points out that emotional engagement is the best predictor of a relationship's longevity. Not sexual frequency. Not problem-solving skills. Not personality compatibility. Just this. Can I reach you when I'm afraid? Will you respond when I do? That's what makes or breaks the bond. Because when we know our partner is there emotionally, we don't just feel loved, we feel alive. We feel safe to be who we are. And in that safety, love flourishes. So many of us have been taught to fear this kind of openness. We've learned to protect ourselves with distance, sarcasm, detachment, even intellectualization. But love is not built in the head. It's built in the heart. And the heart needs softness, needs honesty, needs room to be scared and still held. Johnson doesn't promise that this process is easy, but she promises, backed by science, by experience, by thousands of couples, that it is possible. That even the most frayed relationships can be rewoven, thread by thread, through the simple, difficult, sacred act of turning back toward each other. This chapter is an invitation, a quiet one. It says you don't have to keep spinning. You don't have to stay in the loop. You can stop, reach, and be met. You can choose a new step in the dance, not because everything is okay, but because you matter to each other more than this pain does. And when that happens, when that reach is met with a hand instead of a wall, love rises again. Not as a fantasy, but as a promise renewed. Chapter 8. Love Sense by Dr. Sue Johnson, rewritten into one continuous, immersive passage, emotionally rich, fluid, and uninterrupted, like the voice of someone who sees your heart clearly and walks with you gently through its deepest bruises. There's a quiet kind of heartbreak that lingers in long-term love, the kind that doesn't come from betrayal or dramatic collapse, but from the small, repeated wounds we didn't know how to heal. The times we reached out and found no one there. The moments that mattered more than we admitted, and stayed with us longer than we could explain. These aren't just arguments or bad days. They're attachment injuries. And in Chapter 8, Dr. Sue Johnson turns her full attention to what it takes not just to survive these moments, but to truly heal them together. Because even the strongest relationships carry hurt. That's not a flaw. That's the cost of intimacy. When we love someone deeply, we give them the power to hurt us. And eventually they will, not always intentionally but inevitably, they'll miss a moment we needed, say something sharp when we were fragile, be absent when we were scared. And those moments lodge themselves in our memory, not because we're petty or unforgiving, but because our hearts are wired to remember danger, especially in the very place we expect safety. That's why time doesn't always heal. Why some emotional wounds fester quietly for years. Because love is supposed to be our safe haven. And when it fails us, even just once, a part of us never forgets. But the beauty of this chapter lies in Johnson's deep, compassionate reminder. Love can repair. Not erase, not undo, but repair. She doesn't romanticize this process. She shows us how real it is, how brave it is, and how vital. Healing begins not with an apology, but with understanding. A felt sense of being seen not just for what happened, but for what it meant. When one partner says, "That night when I needed you and you didn't come, I started believing I didn't matter to you," it's not just a complaint. It's a doorway. And when the other partner walks through that doorway, when they respond not with justification but with empathy, "I didn't know how to be there for you, and I've hated myself for it," then something extraordinary begins to happen. The hurt softens. The panic quiets. The distance closes. Johnson explains that this process is deeply tied to our biology. When someone we're bonded to lets us down in a moment of need, our nervous system reads it as a threat. The world no longer feels safe. We become hypervigilant, defensive, or we shut down completely. But when that injury is met with care, when our pain is honored instead of dismissed, our body relaxes. We stop bracing for abandonment. We start believing in the bond again. She gives voice to couples who have gone through this work. Not perfectly, not easily, but with the kind of honesty that changes everything. A man revisits the moment he emotionally shut down after his wife's miscarriage. Not because he didn't care, but because he didn't know how to comfort her. She had spent years carrying that silence as proof that she was alone. But when he finally said, "I was terrified. I thought I would break if I opened up," she saw the fear behind the silence. And for the first time they wept together. Not apart. That's the kind of repair this chapter is about. Not quick fixes. Not shallow reconciliations. But deep emotional reckoning. The kind where the hurt is named out loud, and the response is not defensiveness but presence. The kind of presence that says, "I may not have known how to love you then, but I'm here now. I want to learn how." Johnson guides us through this process step by step, not as a technique, but as an emotional experience. Starts with slowing down, making space for the pain, letting the injured partner speak from their vulnerability, not their anger. Then it requires the other partner to respond from their own heart, not with strategy but with sincerity. It's not about fixing the past. It's about feeling it together. This kind of work is hard. It requires both partners to stay when every instinct tells them to run. But what it gives back is nothing short of transformation. When we move through an old injury with openness, we don't just heal that moment. We change the meaning of the entire relationship. We prove to each other, even when we hurt, we can come back. Even when we break, we can rebuild. Johnson also emphasizes that healing isn't linear. There will be setbacks. One conversation won't magically erase years of distance. But every time we reach, every time we respond, we deepen trust. We show our partner and ourselves that this bond can hold weight, that we are not alone in our pain. And perhaps most powerfully, she reminds us that this kind of repair doesn't just help the relationship, it helps the individuals. Because when we are loved through our wounds, we begin to believe we are lovable in our woundedness. We stop needing to be perfect to be worthy. We start trusting that someone can see us in our mess and still stay. So many of us are walking around carrying injuries that no one ever acknowledged, carrying questions we're afraid to ask, carrying stories we've never fully told. But what if healing is possible? What if our partner could help us rewrite the narrative, not with explanations but with care? What if the very person who hurt us could also be the one to hold us as we grieve? That's not fantasy. That's the work of real love. It's what happens when two people choose courage over comfort, truth over protection, closeness over pride. It's what happens when we say, that mattered. You matter. And I want to heal this not just for me but for us. This is the sacred heart of Chapter 8. That love at its best isn't about never wounding. It's about learning how to come back after we do. And when we do that, when we lean in, hold steady, and speak the truth, we don't just survive love's hardest moments. We grow from them. We build something stronger, richer, and more real than what we had before. Because now we know, even in the ache, even in the rupture, this bond still holds. Chapter 9. Love Sense by Dr. Sue Johnson. Rewritten into a seamless, emotionally immersive passage, tender, flowing, and rooted in the quiet strength that comes after the storm has passed. Love, when it's real and deep, doesn't just lift us in the beginning. It catches us after we fall. And in Chapter 9, we come to understand that the true beauty of connection lies not in its flawless execution, but in its resilience. This is the chapter where healing settles in, where trust, once shattered or shaken, begins to take on weight again, and where partners, having weathered fear and disconnection, start to build something lasting. Not just a romance, but an emotional sanctuary. By now, we've walked through the darkest parts of the relationship terrain. We've watched couples come undone in their patterns of protest and withdrawal, their cycles of fear, their unspoken longing for closeness. We've learned how attachment injuries shape the way we fight, how they deepen the emotional gulfs between people who once clung to each other in joy. But here the focus shifts. This chapter is about what comes after the injury is acknowledged and the pain is shared. It's about the slow, sacred work of creating a new bond. Dr. Sue Johnson shows us that once a couple moves through the fires of disconnection and finds each other again, something powerful happens. They don't just go back to how things were. They become stronger than they ever were before. Because now they've faced the fragility of their love and chosen to stay. They've seen each other in pain and still leaned in. And from that place, a deeper kind of connection takes root. One built not on fantasy or avoidance, but on real, lived emotional engagement. She teaches us that this phase, this post-repair phase, is not passive. It requires intention, attention, gentle rituals, deliberate softness. The lovers must now reinforce their new dance over and over again, not because they doubt it, but because they want to protect it. This is where habits of connection become their new default. It's where the nervous system, once conditioned to brace for rejection, begins to expect closeness instead. And when that shift happens, when the body starts to believe in safety again, love becomes a place to rest, not perform. Johnson introduces the idea of emotional responsiveness as an ongoing practice. It's not about being perfect or always cheerful. It's about being present, emotionally accessible, consistently engaged. It means being able to reach each other in everyday moments, not just the crises. She reminds us that true emotional safety comes from the thousands of micro-interactions that say, I see you, I choose you, even now. This is the part of the relationship that is most easily taken for granted, but also the most critical. Because when couples stop tending to their emotional bond, disconnection can creep in slowly, quietly, like ivy around the foundation. And so, she encourages partners to keep turning toward each other, to keep responding, to keep creating rituals, like checking in after work, saying goodnight with intention, holding each other even when no words are needed. These aren't grand acts of passion. They're love's gentle maintenance, the heartbeat of lasting connection. She also explains how this deeper connection becomes a secure base, a safe haven when the world gets hard, and a launchpad when one partner needs to take a risk, dream big, or try something new. Because when we feel securely loved, we become braver. We move with more confidence in the world. And when life inevitably hits us with loss, stress, or uncertainty, we have a soft place to land. Not just someone to fix things, but someone to feel things with us. Someone who will sit beside us in the silence and simply say, "You don't have to go through this alone." What's especially moving in this chapter is Johnson's invitation to redefine what strength in a relationship looks like. It's not stoicism. It's not hyper-independence. It's openness. The willingness to let someone see you when you're not at your best. To say, "I need you," without shame. And to be the one who hears those words and stays without shrinking. That kind of mutual responsiveness is the very essence of adult attachment. And it's not childish or needy. It's what gives love its power. The chapter closes with a sense of hope, not just for the couples in therapy, but for anyone who's ever wondered if love can last beyond the first spark. Johnson says yes, but only if we understand love not as a static emotion, but as a living, breathing bond. One that must be fed, nurtured, and revisited with tenderness, over and over again. And so, as we leave chapter 9, we don't leave the work behind. We carry it forward. We bring it into the small moments, how we say goodbye, how we apologize, how we listen, how we hold. Because real love isn't found. It's built. And the hands that build it are not perfect, but they are present. This is what it means to love with depth. To keep choosing each other. To hold the bond not as a certainty, but as a sacred gift. One that can be restored, renewed, and made even more beautiful by the very struggles it has survived. Chapter 10. Love Sense by Dr. Sue Johnson, now fully rewritten into a single uninterrupted passage, rich with emotional insight and soft in tone, like a heartfelt conversation that invites you to sit down, breathe, and believe in the long arc of love again. There's a quiet truth that lives beneath all the flash and myth of romance. Real love, the kind that lasts, is not made of grand moments. It's built in the ordinary. In the way we say goodnight, in the hand we reach for without thinking, in the moments we pause to ask, "Are you okay?" Chapter 10 is where Sue Johnson gently brings us back to this truth. We've traveled with her through the storms, through emotional disconnection, protest, healing, and reconnection. Now she invites us to understand what keeps love alive long after the fire of infatuation fades. Because that's the real test, isn't it? Not whether we can fall in love, but whether we can stay in love, and not just stay but grow. In this final chapter, Johnson shifts from repair to maintenance, from surviving emotional injuries to building a bond so strong it becomes a resource, a refuge, and a source of renewal for both partners. She tells us that this kind of love doesn't come from luck or fate. It comes from daily attention to the emotional bond. That might sound simple, but in a world full of distractions, demands, and disconnection, it's anything but. What makes love last, Johnson says, is not constant bliss. It's not sexual perfection or never fighting. It's emotional accessibility and responsiveness. The knowledge that, even in the middle of life's chaos, my partner will still turn toward me, still hear me, still respond when I reach. When that need is met, consistently and sincerely, the nervous system relaxes, the body settles, and love becomes not something we chase, but something we rest in. She introduces the concept of rituals of connection, the seemingly small acts that keep a relationship emotionally alive. It might be a daily walk, a shared coffee, or a regular check-in after work. These aren't luxuries. They are lifelines. They remind both partners again and again, we matter to each other. This bond matters. And when those rituals are neglected, not out of malice but busyness, the bond weakens. Not dramatically but gradually, like a boat with a slow leak. So she urges you, tend to the tether. Protect the bond. Not just when things are falling apart, but especially when things are quiet. Another cornerstone of long-term love, Johnson explains, is embracing change together. We are not static beings. The person we married 10 years ago is not the same person we wake up beside now. And if we're lucky, we aren't either. Love must evolve. It must stretch. The couples who thrive aren't those who avoid change, but those who stay emotionally attuned as they change. Who say, I see you becoming someone new, and I want to know who you are now. That kind of ongoing discovery keeps the relationship alive, not just familiar but vital. And of course, this chapter wouldn't be complete without addressing one of the most tender, often fragile aspects of long-term connection, desire. So many couples believe that fading passion means the end of love. But Johnson reframes it. Desire, she tells us, doesn't disappear because of time, it disappears because of emotional disconnection. When we stop feeling safe with each other, when we stop feeling seen, the body shuts down its longing. But when emotional closeness returns, so does sensuality. Not always in the same fiery form, but in something more layered, more grounded, more meaningful. Emotional intimacy is the gateway to physical intimacy, and the more emotionally responsive we are to each other, the more open we become to touch, playfulness, and joy. But perhaps the most moving part of this chapter is Johnson's invitation to build love as a daily practice. She doesn't romanticize the work. She doesn't pretend it's always easy, but she insists with quiet conviction that it's worth it. That love can be a secure base that allows us to face the world with courage. That love, when nurtured well, doesn't just survive, it transforms us. And so, she brings us back to the beginning, to the 3 core questions every person carries in their heart. Are you there for me? Do I matter to you? Will you come when I call? The couples who stay close, she says, are the ones who keep answering yes to those questions again and again. Not perfectly, not without failure, but faithfully. And it is that faithfulness, emotional, attuned, humble, that becomes the quiet miracle of lasting love. In the end, this chapter and this book is not just about saving relationships. It's about redefining them. It's about understanding that love isn't a prize or a mystery. It's an emotional bond, rooted in biology, shaped by responsiveness, and carried through time by choice. And the choice is simple, even if it's hard, turn toward. Even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's vulnerable, turn toward. Because love at its core is just that, a repeated reaching, quiet promise, a hand extended in the dark. And when we learn how to reach and to respond and to reach again, we don't just keep love alive. We become it.